Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're going to start a series of picking the right ships by gameplay type, but specifically looking at ships that are flyable now in 3.4, and really looking at things that are available to do in 3.4. Now the first one we're going to do is the best moneymaker in the game right now, and that's cargo ships. Now, cargo is really going to take on a few different options, like commodities trading or hauling drugs, but essentially is going to be buying goods at an outpost or a station and then selling them at another where the prices are better, so then you end up making money. So we're going to go ahead and take my standard approach on this, and I'm going to give you the cheaper option, the mid-sized price options, and then the higher priced options, where typically you're going to see the capability of these ships increasing with price. So first off, we have the Avenger Titan. And I know if you followed me for a while, you just knew I was going to recommend an Avenger. But it's for a very good reason in this space. Now, the reason I'm picking the Titan is because it's the lowest priced of the Avengers that are out there. And additionally, it's the one that comes with the most capable cargo ability, with it actually being able to carry 8 SCU of cargo, which is not a ton, but honestly, none of the lower priced options really give you much more than that anyway, at least until the whole A makes its appearance and we start seeing larger numbers come into effect. Now, in addition to decent cargo, it's fast, it's agile, which it's not only going to help you with getting to your destination quickly, but it also lands on surfaces and flies in atmosphere well, but it's also a pretty competent fighter. So if you can't escape and have to fight your way out, you have some of the ability to do that. In fact, I'd actually say that the Avenger is probably the most capable combat ship of all the ones that I'm going to end up mentioning, which is actually one of the reasons I love recommending this ship anyways, is because of its overall versatility. Now, on board you have one size 3 Tiger Strike Gatling on the nose, 2 size 2 Badgers on the wings to help dish out some pretty good firepower. So you've got decent weaponry on the ship. On top of that, you also have 4 size 2 missiles, which isn't a ton, but they aren't really that bad either. The size 2s do a lot more damage than the size 1s do. Now, when you look at the components, you have a 2 size 1 shield generators, so you get a little bit of redundancy there in case one gets damaged. And they're powered by a single size 1 power plant, which isn't all that impressive and can lead to some power management issues if you're not careful. Now, in the Avenger, you're far better off avoiding damage than taking it, because you don't get to absorb it for all that long before you lose your shields. Now, speaking of avoiding it, you do bring 16 flares and 16 chaff to help you avoid missiles when you're trying to make a break for it. Now, the thing with the Avenger is that with only 8 SCU of cargo, you have a few best practices that you're going to want to keep in mind. First off, definitely try and take cargo on both directions of your trip. Know where you're going to go buy your goods and know what that location would buy from you. That way you can kind of maximize your profits by taking cargo with you and selling, and then buying and selling on the other end of that trip to help reduce some of the issues with cargo limitations that this ship has. Additionally, if you have the funds, try to cram as much of the expensive stuff in the back as possible, because they typically have larger payouts. Now, you're not going to make a bunch of money hauling iodine in this, but things like medical supplies and Widow are a different story, and they're expensive anyway, so you might not have the money available to fill a larger ship anyways. The Avenger is like many other ships, where it struggles to get from Crusader to Hurston without overheating, but that can be overcome if you overclock your coolers. Additionally, it has a really long quantum travel time of about 12 minutes on that trip. But the good news is, at least in 3.4, there isn't really any value in jumping between planets to sell commodities. So you're better off just living between the stations and moons that surround Crusader. Now, the next ship that I'm going to recommend is the Cutlass Black. The Cutlass flies great, it has acceptable durability, and a decent set of weaponry. It also brings along 46 SCU of cargo ability, so you can see how that's quite a step up from the Avenger. Now, weapons-wise, you have 4 size 3 missiles, which do a ton of damage, and 8 size 2 missiles, so you get quite a few that you can end up lobbing at targets to try and deal real damage, or just get them distracted enough to help you make your escape. As far as the guns go, you have 2 size 2 Scorpion Gatlings and 2 size 2 Badgers, and then you have 2 size 3 Panthers on the man turret. Now, the Panthers are a pretty powerful weapon, so if you have a buddy with you, it makes you a much more formidable target, considering you can't actually use those unless it's a manned seat. And it gives you the option to hit something behind you or off to your sides while you try and make your escape, assuming you can help to keep your gunner on target. Now, the other perk here is that the Scorpions and the Badgers are currently gimbaled, so you could potentially run fixed size 3 weapons if you choose to do that. But that depends a little bit on your flight control configurations. Now, if you're using a stick, the Cutty has enough maneuverability where I would absolutely do this to maximize your firepower. But if you're using a mouse, I think the gimbal may be a better option, since while the maneuverability is good, it's far from excellent. So especially against smaller, kind of peskier ships, having the gimbals here is going to kind of help you out. The Cutlass has one size 2 shield and one size 2 power plant. Both are civilian class, so they perform okay, and the ship as a result is pretty durable. But it also has a really large hitbox, kind of like a dinner plate, on the top and bottom of the ship. So you need to be a little bit careful about what you're actually showing your attacker if you decide you want to try and survive. You do have 20 flares and you have 20 chaff, which is a decent step up to avoiding missile fire. And I also like the Cutlass as a planetary lander because it makes it in and out of atmosphere quickly. I like having the side doors because I think they're convenient for getting out of the ship pretty quickly, and you don't have to worry about leaving your ramp down. Though the shape of the ship can make it a little bit wonky to land without hitting a rock at a time, which means that if you exit the side doors, your ramp may end up being blocked if you're not careful, and the lack of a ladder means that you may not be able to get back in, which spells a lot of trouble for your cargo if you don't have a friend that can help you get back in. Now, you don't have the same limitations as the Avenger on needing to maximize the higher priced items, but you're still better off trying to get things like fluorine versus iodine to help maximize your returns. But all in all, it's a good flying ship, very combat proficient, and has good cargo space. Up next is actually my personal favorite cargo ship around right now, and that's the Freelancer Max. Now, to be fair, I could have just as easily said the base Freelancer over the Cutlass Black, but I didn't do that for 2 reasons. First off, I like the combat and effectiveness of the Black better than I like on the Freelancer, and it almost makes up for the lack of cargo that you have going from 46 to 66. But I also didn't want 2 Freelancers on this list, and I much prefer the Max. Basically, since you have the massive jump up to 120 SCU of cargo, which almost doubles the base Freelancer. And it does this without much of an impact to the flight model. It's slightly more sluggish with increased mass, but it accelerates similar, and it has a very similar top speed as well, and the maneuverability is fair. Now, the Max is far from a combat ship, so at this stage, if you're doing drug runs or in known dangerous areas, which frankly a lot of them are nowadays, I'd say if you have a buddy on that can run escort for you, I would absolutely do that. However, the Max isn't exactly a neutered ship either. Missile-wise, it brings 4 size 3 missiles and 4 size 2 missiles, which is pretty good firepower, but where it really excels is having great options with the guns. Now, on the sides on the unmanned turrets, it has 4 size 3 Omni-Sky 9s. Now, if you're unfamiliar, they're a fairly slow-firing weapon, but they have great range. They really do a lot of damage as well. And the reason I really like these is because you can deal damage at a long range. Before, many of the smaller ships that are going to be attacking you can actually close the distance for you to be in their combat effectiveness range. And it may be just enough to spook someone off if you can strip their shields down before they reach you. Now, on the turret, you have 2 size 2 DRXJ distortion cannons, which I kind of love as an option for a turret. In a combat situation, you can use these to kind of help overload the power plant of the enemy, which means it can't recharge its shields effectively, meaning you can start doing damage to their hull very quickly. And then you can leverage your missiles to really help finish them off. Now, the big problem here is that the turret on all the Lancers, but specifically on the Max, is that hump in front of it. It kind of looks like a handle on the top of the ship, which means that your ship can't actually fire directly, your turret can't fire directly in front of the ship, meaning you can't target the same thing that your pilot is actually targeting. So you need to really kind of coordinate with your turret gunner to make sure that they actually have an angle to use the distortion cannons where you can then end up getting into a position to deal the real damage with the Omni-Sky 9s. Now, if someone is close on your tail, it helps because you can throw a lot of flux their way. But unless the pilot actually turns around, these guns don't actually deal any damage at all. So it's not a great deterrent there. So I personally like coordinating with my turret gunner, and I typically may have a little bravado that prevents me from just running away all the time, so I'm not afraid to turn around and fight, though sometimes that's a stupid decision. But if you're playing with a random player or you don't want to bother with that, you may be better off swapping those out with a set of ballistics, shotguns, or badgers, or something that actually does physical damage versus the distortion. The cargo capacity on the Max means that you're now open to doing lower-priced commodities at larger scales and still making money, meaning you may be putting less risk in having somebody blow up your ship and you have a significant impact on your wallet. Now, I'd still opt for the most of what you can actually afford to make the largest margins, but you don't have to buy med supplies or Widow or Altrusia toxin anymore to really make money at this point. Standard commodities are now going to actually net you a solid return. The Max has some pretty decent durability to it, and with 2 size 2 shields and 1 size 2 power plant, it stays up and strong for you for a decent while compared to some of the other ships too. I definitely recommend taking an escort with you in the Max, but you can handle things without one if you're a proficient flyer or you're kind of smart about where you're doing your trading. Now, the last ship that I'm going to recommend here is going to be the Drake Caterpillar. And I could mention the Starfarer here, which does a great job of interplanetary quantum travel, being extremely fast. But since I've already mentioned that it's not a great value in 3.4 for commodities, we're going to opt for the smaller Caterpillar, which flies better and actually carries more cargo. The Cat is the current king of cargo at 576 SCU of cargo capability, but it's probably the weakest on this list as far as defensive ability if you fly solo, but you do get a better shot when you have your turrets manned. Now, on its turrets, it has 2 of them, one on the top front and one on the bottom rear, both of which are going to bring 2 size 4 M6A laser cannons, which are very powerful, have decent range, though they can struggle against faster targets due to their slower rate of fire. Additionally, you have 3 small laser cannons that the pilot controls, but honestly, it's pretty damn hard to maneuver this ship against a fighter, and with no missiles, you're basically relying on your turrets if you have them, or better yet, an escort to deal with them. Now, you do get 3 full contingents of countermeasures to help you avoid taking missile damage, and you do have 2 size 3 power plants and 1 size 3 shield, so it's the toughest ship of this group, so it can survive long enough to allow escorts to do their thing. Now, landing the Caterpillar at a station is a pretty straightforward task, though you can't actually land it at Grimhex. Though in ground hangars like at Levski and at truck stops, it can be a little bit wonky to kind of get it landed appropriately based on how the cockpit is kind of in the command module, which is on like the back left-hand side of the ship, meaning lining things up can be a little bit complicated. And then landing on planetary surfaces can be a little bit tricky too, since you have like 10 landing gears on the modules up front, which means that if any of them end up touching a rock, you may not land flush. So you always need to be careful that your elevator when you exit the ship can get low enough to the ground, otherwise you may not be able to get back in and you're going to lose the cargo in the ship if you have to reclaim it. So a word to the wise, always check that before you're buying because it's the hardest ship to land well. Now it does fly okay in atmosphere, but it's big and sluggish, so it's certainly not going to dance around like a fighter or make quick getaways either. I typically recommend the Cat for large quantities of cheaper to mid-price commodities, which I normally opt for at the Yellow Moon, specifically at the mining locations for things like gases. So when you're first starting out after like a server wipe, I like to start with loading it up with iodine, and then as I make money, I swap that out for chlorine, and then after I make more money, I swap that out for fluorine, and you'll continue to see your profit margin increase. But you can net large profits trading at this scale with lower priced items. So there you have it. That's my picking the right ship for cargo hauling in 3.4 of the currently flyable options. If you have others you want to recommend or thoughts or questions, please get them in the comments. Also, stay tuned for the next one coming out, which I think is going to be picking the right combat ship in 3.4 as well. Finally, thank you guys for bearing with the lack of videos over the last month. I've been trying to get some things in order, and the break has served me personally well, but I am back at it and ready to rock, so expect to see many more videos coming your way. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.